So this is another aspect I'm finding interesting, right? Now that I'm making these videos, I'm self-analyzing. And so an interesting aspect of that is, excuse me, that what if my inferior genetic, resulting in inferior digestion, thus a predisposition to diabetes, alcoholism, etc. What I'm thinking right now is that had I just not been so fixated on drugs and sex that I spent all my time chasing drugs and sex, but instead had some self control and abstained from these addictions, that instead of, chasing pussy, basically, I would have worked, got a job, gone to college, and all that stuff. Now, I've already self-analyzed why marijuana had such a destructive impact on my life, and that's because of my genetics, specifically the gene mutation known as schizophrenia. Therefore, I had a genetic, component in my cannabis adverse response, which is why marijuana destroyed my life. There's people without these genetic predispositions who marijuana destroys their lives, but specific to me, that was the reason. So therefore, you could say that it was my genetics that caused me to not give up, drugs and sex for employment and discipline and leading a religious life and things like that, which I'm doing now as best that I can with no environmental reinforcement, really. I mean, somewhat, but it's all me. I tried to join FSSPX server on Discord, and they're like, no way, buddy, you're too base for this server, and they didn't let me in. Right? Like, that's the Catholic outreach is, exclusion, not inclusion, because you're not black, so, your life doesn't matter. Wokeness has entered the church that's supposed to be the anti-woke church. Okay. But, what if my genetics are why I also was bad at relationships, right? What if people that are prone to addiction are also incapable of monogamy? You could make the argument that monogamy and sobriety are very similar parts of the brain. And I'm thinking that all these things are connected. The digestive system is connected with the endocrine system, which is connected with the limbic system. Your immune system is connected with with your digestive system especially. It's not like these systems are separate. No, they offset each other. And so if you want to look at this environmentally, what environmentally things are affecting all these different systems, I created sort of a hierarchy. And you could argue this is a racial hierarchy, but you see hierarchies within hierarchies, like classes amongst races. There's rich whites, rich Jews, poor Jews. I think there's even, rich blacks and poor blacks, rich Native Americans, poor Native Americans. Although Native Americans, I think, are kind of more communistic in their tribalism, but they're still hierarchies within hierarchy. Yeah, so within the racial hierarchy, you get, a class hierarchy. And so, yeah. Jeez, where was I going with that? I completely lost track of my train of thought because it was speeding too fast. But, right, so environmentally, there's hierarchy within the hierarchy, and so you have subsets of larger industries. So you could argue the marijuana industry is connected with the Hollywood industry, the pornography industry, and the rap industry. But beyond that, you could split it into the drug industry and the sex industry, which can be looked at as the vice industry or the pleasure industry. And so it's not just the marijuana industry. There's also the opiate industry, the fentanyl industry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where you get into the other side of things. Rap, Hollywood, movies, and pornography, all basically the sex industry, right? And so why are these industries are just like the different systems of the human body. They complement each other, they integrate with each other, they support each other. The rap industry's growth is supported by the marijuana industry's growth, and vice versa, which is also Hollywood, same relationship, and the porn industry, same relationship, and the opiate industry, same relationship. So therefore, people with inferior genetics like myself, you can make the argument that monogamy is a social construct, right? It's not inherent in our biological based behavior. Monogamy goes back to primitive times in more of possession. She is my woman because I own her, not because I love her. And, if you love something, let it go. If it loves you, it'll come back. Unless it's stupid or genetically incapable of, loyalty and attachment. Right? And that's the thing. So some people are more genetically resilient to these environmental influences than others. And I presume that... So if you look at history of Europe, right? The white people... It's not that they are inherently more moral. It's because of things like the Black Plague offsetting their hereditary immunopathology, their digestive systems, endocrine systems, etc., that they can just handle drugs and sex better than indigenous, populations who have been isolated on continents for thousands of years, like the Aborigines, the Native Americans, the Native Hawaiian population, etc. There are exceptions to that, like the Xavante tribe in South America, who developed their own, immunity resistance to European pathogens with no immunizations or, antibiotics or anything like that. But they were in the rainforest, so there's an argument that the environment of the rainforest, such oxygen-rich, nutrient-rich environment, boosted their immune systems. So environment plays a factor as well as genetic components. You could say that Native Americans didn't have that advantage in North America. Yeah. So, therefore, my drug and sex addicted life, which is genetic, could have been changed environmentally. Environment can alter genetics. You can activate or suppress genes with the environment. There's a whole scientific field of epigenetics based on the interaction of environment and genetics. Heterozygotic genes can remain dormant or be activated. But through environmental, stimulus. So therefore, had the previous generations not been susceptible or given in and therefore eliminated drugs from the environment of their children, like the secondhand marijuana smoke, exposure to kids, which is happening more and more because the wickedness and evilness and corruption and greed of not just the plutocracy, but humans in general, human nature. Yeah. Had they just kept America weed free and porn free and therefore rap free and no sexual content in Hollywood movies, etc., television, advertisements, music, television, right, MTV, etc., had they done that, had they not been too busy struggling to get a paycheck to feed and house their kids, they could have protected their kids from these wicked capitalist, industry leaders who deliberately did this. This is all by design. These outcomes are not coincidence or just organic and naturally occurring. No, this is very deliberate social engineering. And it's pretty nuts to me that I'm barely aware of all this now at 42. My parents should have been aware of this before I was born and, not gotten a divorce. My dad should have gotten a degree that had a guarantee of income. And if not chased a degree in philosophy, but got a job instead. So that way my mom could have been home to protect us from these wicked influences. This is happening even more now than it was in the 90s when I was a kid and the 80s. Microsoft, Google, companies like that, they are doing more to corrupt children than parents can protect them from. Those companies have more of an influence on the psychological development of children than their own parents do. And that's happening on a mass scale all over the country, if not all over the globe. I guarantee it. And I know a rich white guy who isn't rich because he was born into it. It's a myth, the white privilege thing. He worked hard to get where he was at and is at. And even his kids are being corrupted by Microsoft and stuff. So there is no genetic immunity to propaganda. And when I asked him about it, he said, "Oh, well, that's been going on since the days of Rome, so why bother to fight it or stop it?" Right? So I guess whites, instead of being like, "Oh no, we got to be Catholic, we got to be repressed, we got to abstain from these things," they're like, no. We'll develop a tolerance to them. We'll embrace them, increase them, and therefore we'll be strong enough to endure them. Instead of trying to fight it, we'll just embrace it and survive it that way and become stronger than you for trying to run from it. I could be wrong, but that was my interpretation of the experience with that guy.